After months of negotiations, President Biden says he and congressional Democrats have agreed to a framework for his Build Back Better plan. The president made the announcement before leaving for a trip to Europe Thursday. While the framework is half the price of the president's original bill, it still contains billions of dollars to help American families and fight climate change. But lawmakers still need to finalize the actual text of the bill and bring it to a vote. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes reports.
Just before jetting off to Europe, President Biden made one last dash to Capitol Hill. Part celebration, part pep talk.
I think we're going to be in good shape.
He said he's confident he now has the votes to pass a $1.75 trillion plan that would drive down child care costs for most low and middle income families and establish universal pre-K for more than 6 million 3- and 4-year-olds. The bill would also boost the supply of affordable housing, increase college Pell Grants, and close a Medicaid gap to cover 4 million more people.
It is probably the most consequential bill since the 1960s.
This new deal comes after weeks of talks with 2 moderate Senate Democrats who still stopped just short of embracing the bill today.
I look forward to continuing working in good faith.
To win their support, President Biden has dropped some progressive priorities, like guaranteed paid family leave and free community college. Medicare would be expanded to cover hearing aids, but not vision or dental care.
Well, it's been a long and difficult negotiation.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, already in Rome, helped to broker the compromise.
I can see a lot of Americans saying, wow, a lot of these provisions sound great. But what I'm really worried about right now is inflation.
Well, you know, some of the most important ways in which families see inflation is they feel they can't afford child care. And what they're going to see is a massive reduction in the amount that they have to spend for child care.
Republicans slammed the plan today as more big spending.
Anybody who votes for any of these bills without seeing the fine print is like a rock, only dumber.
And Nancy joins me now from Rome, where she's traveling with the president. Nancy, the president says a framework is in place. So where will Americans see the most benefits from this legislation? And what were some of the things that were left out?
Well, I think the most striking benefits that Americans will see, particularly will affect Americans with young children, because there are some pretty significant child care subsidies in this plan. They would be doled out by the states, and it would ensure that any family that is making less than $300,000 a year, which is most American families, would not pay more than 7% of their income for child care. And one thing we know from families of young children is that often their child care expenses are equal to or greater than their rent. So this could be a very significant benefit for a lot of American families. Then I think another major benefit that Americans won't necessarily see immediately, because it takes a little time to implement, is universal pre-K. There are hundreds of billions of dollars in this bill that would go to states to establish universal pre-K, not just for 4-year-olds, but for 3-year-olds as well at public schools around the country, that would ultimately enable maybe 6 million, maybe more children to go to school. And that is essentially adding to free public education by 2 years. The White House argues this is the biggest expansion of public education in more than 100 years since free public high school was added. And so they believe that that would be quite significant. There are other provisions. The bill extends the child care tax credit by a year. There are about 2 to 4 million more people who would be covered, according to White House estimates, by insurance by closing what's known as the Medicaid gap, essentially giving vouchers to low-income individuals in states that didn't expand Medicaid under Obamacare. Those people would now be able to get lower-cost insurance instead. There is money to build affordable housing. Really across the board, from child care to elder care, there's even more money in there for hearing aids to be covered by Medicare. There is a lot for Democrats to like. although at the same time, of course, there is a great deal of disappointment that some things had to go by the wayside, including Medicare coverage for vision and dental and free community college, and a guarantee of paid family leave. But so far, progressives seem to be okay with that. They understand that they got a lot this time, and it certainly isn't their last bite at the apple.
And Nancy, we heard part of your exclusive interview with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. It didn't sound like she was saying that inflation wouldn't be a concern, but that one of the major costs, fixed costs, childcare, will take less out of the pocketbooks of parents. Did you two discuss the concerns of inflation beyond childcare or the specific bills that are being addressed in the bill?
Mm-hmm. We did. And she continues to insist that the inflation that we've been seeing is temporary and is related to the pandemic, related to the fact that Americans shifted from purchasing services to purchasing goods during the pandemic. It's part of the reason that we've seen these challenges with the supply chain. She says it is a temporary situation. And I asked her at one point whether if we are talking, the two of us, a year from now, whether we will still be experiencing inflation. And she argued that we would not. Obviously, only time will tell. Right now, what people are noticing is that it costs more to go to the grocery store. They can't get everything that they want at the grocery store, and their gas is more expensive as well. But you know, she does have one point, which is that if people are paying a lot more for goods, but they're paying a lot less for childcare, for education, then at the end of the day, they may be better off.
Well, a key component of the Build Back Better Act is the $555 billion to fight climate change. You're there in Europe traveling with the president. Much of that trip is actually going to be focused on climate change. Nancy, does he feel that he's actually secured an agreement on that aspect of the plan?
Yes, there's about $500 billion worth of climate change provisions in the bill, offering things like tax credits to both individuals and businesses to shift to renewable energy. And it was so important for the president to secure at least a quasi-deal, which is, I think, one way to put where we are right now in this process, before he came here to Rome, because it's going to be, as you pointed out, one of the biggest topics they discuss here at the G20 summit over the weekend. It's obviously going to be the focus of the climate change summit that he's going to be attending in Scotland. And what the president really needs to be able to do at those conferences in order to have any sway over other world leaders is to be able to put his money where his mouth is and say, look, here's what I'm doing in America. Now I challenge you to do something similar in your countries. And so while he doesn't have a bill that has crossed the finish line and hasn't passed the House or the Senate yet, the White House is arguing that these other world leaders know how the legislative process works in Washington, and they can see that that this is in the process of becoming a law, although we know that any number of things could go wrong between now and at least a week from now, which is probably the earliest that we could see a vote on this Build Back Better plan.
All right, quasi-ideal at this moment. So, Nancy, before we let you go, you're in Rome, where President Biden will kick off his trip with a visit with the Pope. Tell us what's on the agenda.
Well, these two have a personal relationship, Lana, that goes back years. President Biden has said that Pope Francis gave him immeasurable comfort, him and his family, after his son Beau died. They have met a number of times, both here in Rome and in Washington, D.C. In fact, President Biden, when he was vice president, led the delegation here to Rome for Pope Francis's inauguration as Pope. So they have a very close relationship. They still communicate. They will probably talk about things that they both feel passionately about. Things like climate change. Most likely the Pope will want to talk to the president about ensuring that more COVID vaccines go to the poor around the world. That's something that he has challenged wealthy nations like the U.S. to do more of. We won't necessarily get to see a lot of that meeting because right now there is a bit of a conflict between the U.S. media and the Vatican news agency, which now says it won't be providing live coverage of the meeting. But nevertheless, a historic day for this president, his first time as president, meeting with the Pope, which is something that only the second Catholic president certainly has been looking forward to.
Absolutely. Nancy, thank you.